Hey guys, BagHead here, and welcome to another Gundam video. And in this video, I will explain what is Gundam. This video is my own personal way, my own way to explain what is Gundam, which shows what you can watch, what kind of universes does it separate to, the many different sides of Gundam, what should the beginners start with, the origins of Gundam, how it started, all of those stuff I will go over in this short video, just an explanation for new viewers. So, what is Gundam? So, Gundam is a member of the mecha genre. What is mecha genre? Mecha genre is basically your average Evangelion, Mazinger, Gurren Lagann, Voltron with its combinations, and Power Rangers with their Megazords, um, and of course Gundam, as I mentioned, is there. Or from Western side, there's Mega XLR. That's a mecha genre. So basically, giant robots piloted by human beings. And how it all began is we go to Japan and we look at this guy, father of Gundam, Tomino, also known as Kill Them All Tomino, because most of the main cast doesn't survive half of the shows. So, Tomino created the Mobile Suit Gundam 1979 show, and that's how all the Gundam shows began. It began with the Universal Century. What is Universal Century? I will explain that real soon. So he created the Gundam Mobile Suit Gundam 1979, and with that Universal Century began, and then all the other shows came after it. Started, began. Kind of repeating myself. So, what is Universal Century, you may ask? That's we come to the next segment, the main Universal Gundam. So, the Universal Century is basically the main timeline of Gundam. This is the big main story of Gundam. This is where the big main story of Gundam happens. Every big event, every war that follows each other, every recurring characters, recurring plot points, all of this happens here. Everything starts with the Mobile Suit Gundam, and then continues with Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, and Char's Counterattack. This is the Universal Century that is from the 80s to 90s, and after that we go to 2000s Universal Century shows such as Unicorn, Narrative, and the most recent edition, Hathaway's Flash. And there's gonna be a second movie of Hathaway that's coming next year, I believe. And that's all of the Universal Century main shows. I'm gonna talk about side stories real soon because Universal Century also has side stories that are basically fill in the blanks. You see, since Universal Century began with Mobile Suit Gundam, in the Mobile Suit Gundam anime, I mentioned this in my first video when I talk about Mobile Suit Gundam, there is the 1 Year War. It is one of the biggest wars, and it is what sets up the event that happens in Mobile Suit Gundam anime. And this 1 Year War was really huge, so there are many side stories that add into the 1 Year War. Like, since it was so big, what was happening while the Mobile Suit Gundam events were happening? Like, what was the other fronts of the war? What was the other fronts of war was dealing with? Were there any other Gundam prototypes? Were there any other Zaku or Xeon weaponry that was used in the 1 Year War? So the side stories are like kind of fill in the blanks, which I will get to real soon. So yeah, this is a Universal Century. It's all of the anime series are has the running theme of war is bad, the horrors of war, the child soldiers happen, the really dire times, and each anime series has their own two sides that we see, and these animes has recurring characters. So in my opinion, if you like a storyline that goes this long through like four anime series, tons of movies, tons of two season or like a 50 40 episode like anime series with recurring topics, recurring characters, this is where you should start. Even when you're beginning watching Gundam, in my opinion, the Universal Century is where you start because everything else kind of spawned from this, like the alternative universes and stuff. Like they were like what ifs or like other type of topics were handled in the alternative universes. So in my opinion, Universal Century is a good way to start Gundam. Only problem is, yes, this is a really long journey. Each anime series are 40 to 50 episodes, but those episodes are also given very detailed, and each episode has 24 minutes, but these 24 minutes are used very well, and all of the execution of the story is also done very well. So if you have time to spare, or if you can just even like if you can just watch one episode a day, I suggest at least trying the first Mobile Suit Gundam 1979. That's all I can say about UC. When I come to side stories, I will explain more about the UC stuff. So, let's go to the next segment. So, the alternative timelines are basically the interesting part. So, there is an alternative UC, which is basically Universal Century what ifs. Basically, Basically, what alternative universal century is, let's take a war or an event from universal century, but let's retell or add a what if. Like add some different storyline to it. Like what if Earth Federation was more advanced in the One Year War. And yes, I forgot to mention in Universal Century that the main two sides are Earth and space, Earth versus space. In alternative timelines, this can sometimes change to maybe aliens or AI attacking the main characters, but it's even in alternative universes, it still can be either Earth versus space or like. Oh, wait, to be honest, I want to explain alternative timelines real quick. I kind of mix them up real fast. So, what is alternative timelines? Alternative timelines basically they tell a whole new story unless it's alternative universal century, which like I said, alternative universal century are what ifs. What if Earth Federation was more advanced? What if Zion was more advanced? What if Char Aznavour, the main antagonist of the Mobile Suit Gundam, piloted the main mecha suit, which is the Gundam? Or what if this war was like that? What if there was a Mars colony that was rebellious against its oppressors? And alternative universe shows are either two season series or movies or like 10 episodes cartooning series. Like it can be about horrors of war, or it can be about people in world building their own Gundam model kits and fighting them in a digital arena like Pokemon, which is Gundam Build Divers right here as you can see. Or it can be like SD Gundam, which is means super deformed. That's what SD means. SD Gundam is a comedy series. It takes the main characters of the Universal Century and does some comedic sketches with them, or treats them like it's an episode of SpongeBob, or like it's like made friendship is great, and it just adds that funny side. Since regular Gundam is really gloomy, you can watch SD Gundam to laugh unstoppingly, laugh for hours and hours, and the alternative universe designs can differ very extremely than Universal Century, But I don't think that's a problem if you're interested in Gundam because there will be giant robots regardless. Alternative universes just change their designs a bit. Like there can be beam weapons in one, there can be ninjas or samurai designed mechas in another one, or they can be just mobile suits using iron melee weapons and hitting each other real hard. Or one of them can be a world robot tournament where mobile suits from each country of the world fight in a tournament to see who's gonna be the big winner. So that's what the alternative universe is. It tells many different stories, many different characters, and many different type of genre: drama, comedy, tragedy. You get the idea. Alternative universes, you can start from here to Gundam as well. But like I said, in my opinion, Universal Century is a better way to get into the main idea of Gundam, even though there are some really good Gundam alternative universes that also tell the main thematic of war is bad, such as Iron Blooded Orphans or Which from Mercury or Seed or even G-Quacks. So I suggest for Gundam beginners, um, in the grand scheme of things, start where you like from. Like start, you can start where you want. Like it is completely fine. These are just my personal opinions and suggestions on where you should start with Gundam. So if you're gonna start with alternative universe, I would suggest something like Seed or Iron Blood Orphans or Which One Mercury. I would also suggest the G Gundam Fighters if you want to watch a fun fighting anime. It has some quality fights. For G Quacks, I would suggest it after at least watching the Mobile Suit Gundam because G Quacks is an alternative Universal Century show. It's basically a what if. So, in my opinion, you should watch Mobile Suit Gundam, then you start watching G Quacks to understand certain things better. So, yeah, what do we learn from these two segments? Universal Century is the main timeline of Gundam. This is the long line of chain of events that happen between Earth and space colonies, big war, and the sides of the war always change, such as in the Mobile Suit Gundam is Earth Federation versus Zeon, in Zeta Gundam is Ayug versus Titans, or in Double Zeta, it's Axis versus Ayug, or in the Charles Counterattack, it's Neo Zeon versus Earth Federation, or whatever. I didn't watch Charles Counterattack yet, but you get the idea. It's Earth versus space colonies. The main team is war is bad. It is very dire times, and anything horrible can happen in war. But hey, look at the cool robot. So if you want to see a single line of chaining events with huge series with 50 episodes and high quality movies from the 80s, Universal Century is your place. If you want to see what if scenarios or different storylines that are short, 2 season, maximum 20, 40, 30 episodes, or you want to watch something comedic like SD Gundam, Alternative Universes is your place. So, we come to the side stories. As I mentioned before, side stories are more like add stuff to already existing events. And I first want to talk about the Universal Century side stories because they have bunch of them. These side stories of Universal Century can be from old PlayStation 2 games to huge novels like Gundam Sentinel or short 13 or 8 episode series such as Gundam Stardust Memory or Gundam War in the Pocket or ATMST, or these can be manga series such as Gundam Crossbones. And as I wanted to be honest, Gundam Crossbones is not a side series, it's like a late Universal Century series, which I might have forgot to mention. Late Universal Century, if we go back, is basically like think it as if like a split between Universal Century and late Universal Century. Late or future Universal Century is basically future stuff. It has Gundam F90 and F91. It has Gundam Victory and Gundam Crossbones and Gundam G Savior. G Savior is a movie, and Gundam Crossbones is a manga series. This is basically like it is still war is bad, but now it's in the future. There are things that are different. All new characters, so there might be only recurring plot points, no recurring characters. I don't think so. I never saw any recurring characters in F91, but that's what future Universal Century is. It's basically the future wars and stuff. Like it's still Earth versus space stuff, but now it's in the future of Universal Century. So the side stories of Universal Century basically add stuff to the main story. Like you don't have to watch these between the big shows. Like, oh, I finished Gundam and I'm gonna go to Zeta Gundam. I have to watch all these side stories. No, you can watch the side stories after you're done with all of the main ones, like the main shows and movies, because side stories only just add more stuff to the already existing established lore of Gundam. Like an example being like War in the Pocket, 8 MS Team are in the 1 Year War. So these two series basically add more events to the Mobile Suit Gundam anime, basically like what was happening in the other fronts of the war. Or Stardust Memory is basically like a prequel show to Zeta Gundam, but you don't have to watch it before Zeta Gundam because it doesn't change, like it doesn't have that much like importance to be watched before Zeta. You can just watch it after it. Like Star Wars movies, like the prequels came after the sequels, right? I mean, you know what I mean. The prequels came after the original trilogy, so the Stardust Memory can be treated as such. It's a prequel that came after Zeta Gundam. There's also MS Igloo, which is also another 1 Year War story. Gundam Sentinel, I forgot which timeline this was, but this is another just add-on. Like you do not have to watch the Universal Century side stories in between big shows. You can just watch them after you're done with the big stuff, so you can just add more flavor to the good food you're already eating. You know what I mean? There's also side stories or different stories of alternative universes, such as 8 Gundam or like Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans Udur Hunt, or there's a Witch from Mercury manga which adds on to the story that exists in the alternative universe. The alternative universe mangas and movies are shorter and there isn't many of them. So if you started with alternative universes, watching side stories will be easier because there isn't much many of them. I'm remembering correctly because Witch from Mercury only has like a manga and Iron Blood Orphans has like Order Hunt so far, from what I know, or there can be games cutscenes that also exist for these alternative universe animes. But like I said, it's not as much as Universal Century side stories. So these are the side stories of Gundam. They are like DLC for the big animes. You can watch them after, you can watch them in between. It doesn't change anything important with the main story, it just adds to it. And I suggest you should take a look at some of them, especially the Universal Century ones, because even though they are shorter and they're like DLC packs for the anime, they are still really high quality. And since they were making a later date than the original shows, their animation quality also changes, and they are usually in a higher quality and higher um, animation stuff. Like you know what I mean. So the last timeline I want to talk about after the side stories is correct century. From my research, the correct century is end point of all of Gundam timelines. This includes alternative universe and universal century. So apparently, according to the Gundam community that the people I asked, the turn a Gundam from correct century is where all these alternative timelines are connected into as an end point. So at the end of the Gundam timelines, Turn A Gundam is there. Is this debatable? Yes. Like is this like a objective truth? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure this has some subjectivity to it, and you don't have to watch Turn A Gundam in the end. You can start with Turn A Gundam, and it will. I don't think it being like an endpoint doesn't change anything, because the correct century show Turn A Gundam is still like a, still feels like an alternative universe tale. It's just very, 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 very late time, like date of the timeline, just end, like I said, end point. But it's still, I heard it's a really amazing show with great animation and interesting storylines. So if you want to start with Turn A Gundam, it's pretty okay with me at least. All right, now I want to shortly talk about the hobby side of Gundam. So Gundam is pretty big in Japan and all globally as well. So I want to talk about some of the merchandise and the hobbies you can start with the Gundam as well. So Gundam already has a bunch of merchandise like t-shirts and clothing and magnets and small miniatures, yada yada. But the main hobby side of Gundam is Gunpla, also known as Gundam plastic kits. There are many grades of them, such as starting from super deformed to high grade, real grade, master grade, and perfect grade, all different sizes, different prices. There's also a new addition, which is the entry grade for beginners of this model kit building, so you don't need any tools to cut them off from the runners they came with, as you can see right here. And Gundam model kit hobby is, if you're interested in Legos, I suggest it's a good hobby to start with, and high grades are some of the most common ones you can find if you are interested in building these. So that's all I'm gonna say about Gunpla. Like that, if you're a beginner, if you think about starting a hobby like Gundam model kit building, you should start with high grades. Then, if you're interested, you can check the other grades as well. But the pricing will change with all the other grades. High grades are the cheapest and the most commonly found ones. If you're interested in smaller ones, you can go for ST Gundams. So, summary time. Let's go all the way back. So, what did we learn from this slideshow? So, Gundam is a mecha genre, giant robots piloted by little people. It was created by Tomino in Japan, and it's one of the most iconic mecha genre animes that is known in Japan and on all globally, such as Code Geass, Macross, Gurren Lagann, and Mazinger, or Pat Labor, or the other Evangelion, or Votoms, or any other mecha series that I can't remember the name of. We then learned the main universe of Gundam, and the main big one is Universal Century, which bunch of shows and movies that follow each other. There's another part I want to add to Universal Century is there are compilation movies of Gundam Universal Century, but these movies cut so much from the series. I wouldn't suggest you should watch these, because then you might ask like, why is this? Why is there a missing scene? Did I miss something while watching this? Did I miss the scene? Yes, Gundam movies or compilation movies causes that. There are so many scenes and episodes cut from those movies, so I wouldn't suggest watching those movies. There are also movies that kind of remake the original animes, but they're usually executed badly. One example being Zeta New Translation. Do not watch Zeta Gundam New Translation, because it's a really bad execution of the original Zeta Gundam and doesn't do a good job on remaking the story really well. But if you're interested to see why it was called bad, sure, Be my guest. I don't mind it. I'm gonna watch Zeta New Translation as well because I'm curious why is it called a bad retelling. So that's all I wanted to say about the movies. The Universal Century is the main timeline. It has shows that follow each other's plot points and story. And if you're interested in a single line of chain of events, Universal Century is your place. Alternative Universes is another place you can start. Different stories, different characters, what ifs, yada yada yada. If you wanna watch short series or 2 season series that tell interesting stories, uh, Alternative Universe is your place. Side stories are DLC packs for Alternative Universe or Universal Century. You can watch them after, or you can watch them in between these big shows. It's all up to your decision. The correct century is the end point of all the timelines, and you can even start from here. Doesn't matter. And the hobby side of Gundam is Gunpla. If you're interested in model kit building or Legos, I suggest you should take a try. You should try this hobby at least once. And that's all for what is Gundam, where can you start it, and all that is important, I believe. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, share, comment, and I see you guys in the next video, which I will be go over my experience with Zeta Gundam. I finished it, and it was quite interesting. I can't wait for you guys to see that video. Goodbye.